figuring out how to use Xilonen, well, you're in luck because in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to be able to take your Xilonen and show you how to equip her with the best weapons, artifacts, and team compositions to maximize her effectiveness in your team in Genshin Impact. Xilonen's gameplay primarily revolves around her using her source sample mechanic, which is a part of her elemental skill. When she enters her Night Soul Blessing state, you will be able to see her 3 samples shown by her Night Soul bar, and these are going to be Geo by default. For every party member that is either the Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro element, a Geo sampler will be changed to their corresponding element, and it's going to look something like this. When you fully full her Night Soul Blessing meter, you'll be able to activate these source samplers and activate an elemental resistant shred for each of these corresponding source samples. For instance, if you have a Pyro, Hydro, and Cryo source sample, you'll be able to do a resistant shred for all 3 elements. While these source samples are activated, nearby opponents will have their elemental resistance decreased for a set duration of 15 seconds, going from 33% at talent level 9 all the way up to 45% resistant shred at talent level 13. Do keep in mind that due to her passive ascension talent, in order to gain enough Night Soul meter to activate the resistant shred, you're going to need at least 2 characters in your party that are either the Pyro, Hydro, Cryo, or Electro elements. Xilonen's main weakness is that her elemental skill and resistant shredded and her source sample mechanic don't interact with Anemo or Dendro characters at all. However, you can still include them in your party composition. Strengths being that even though Xilonen is a Geo character and primarily up to this point Geo supports benefit mainly other Geo characters, she isn't tied to that element in particular and can benefit all of the other elements in Genshin Impact. She has fantastic support role compression, as she's also not only be able to be a buffer and a debuffer for your team, but also a fantastic healer as well. In her resistant shred, which is something akin to maybe you've heard of Kazuha, is very powerful, but unlike Kazuha in the Viridian and Venver set, you don't need to reapply it to multiple enemies throughout multiple waves in something like the Abyss. As it's technically a buff from her source sample activation, you can keep it up for that 15 seconds without needing to swap her in and out to reapply the effect. She also has fantastic high single target healing for your active character, and so this makes her able to help characters such as Verena become even better in your party. Xilonen has a very easy to use rotation. The resistance decrease from her activation is going to last that 15 seconds, meaning you want to use her near the start of your rotation, but not at the exact beginning, because you're going to need to be able to proc the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City 4-piece artifact set, but more on that later. The rotation is as follows. You will apply an element with one of your other characters, swap into Xilonen, use her elemental skill, activate her elemental burst if you so desire, use 2 normal attacks, and swap to the next character. Xilonen needs 2 normal attacks to cap out her Night Soul point meter so you can activate that resistant shred effect. Using your elemental burst is optional, as it only provides healing in this build, and therefore simply depends on if you need to heal your party, such as providing healing for fanfare stacks on a character like Verena. For talent priority, focus on your elemental skill first to increase that resistant shred, elemental burst secondary to increase that healing effect when you use some team compositions that include Verena, and then lastly, your normal attack if you decide to do so. Weapon selection for Xilonen is pretty straightforward. Xilonen has 4 very powerful weapon options. The first one's going to be her signature weapon, the Peak Patrol Song. This is going to boost up the defense that Xilonen has to increase her healing and also increase a damage percent bonus for everyone else in Xilonen's party. This allows her to boost up 2 facets for her entire support kit and is all around her best weapon. However, if you don't want to pull for that weapon, the Freedom Sworn is going to be a fantastic option for increasing your team's offensive capabilities, as it's going to boost up not just attack off of the passive effect of it, but also damage percent bonus for your team as well. Cinnabar Spindle or Flute of Espazol are 4-star options that have defense main stats for you to increase the healing that you're able to do with Xilonen. And then a very powerful other option is the Favonius Sword, where you can forego some of the damage percent bonuses and as well as some of the healing and use the Favonius Sword on your Xilonen to make her an energy battery of sort for everyone else in your team. Her best artifact setup is going to be 4-piece Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City. The 2-piece here is just going to give her some slight elemental energy regeneration by giving her 6 elemental energy back every time someone triggers a Night Soul Burst. The 4-piece here, though, is going to give you up to a 40% damage percent bonus for up to 20 seconds for everyone in your party. Do keep in mind that this damage bonus that Xilonen is going to be giving your team with Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City is for the 2 elements that are involved in the elemental reaction that she is part of, meaning that it's going to be 1 part Geo and 1 part of the other element in your team. For instance, if you're trying to boost up Hydro damage, you're going to want to apply a Hydro Aura effect with Hydro damage from one of your party members before you swap your Xilonen in to do damage and activate her elemental skill in 2 normal attacks. Main stats, the sands can either be defense percent or energy recharge, depending on the other substats that you have. If you have a significant amount of energy recharge, 140 to 160% will be fine for most teams, then you can go for a defense percent main stat sands. Goblet's going to be defense percent, and then circlet will be defense percent as well, or you could go for a crit rate circlet if you're using the Favonius weapon. Substat priority is defense percent energy recharge up to that 140 to 160% mark for most teams, and then crit rate is a very powerful substat to prioritize if you are using the Favonius sword. If you have another party member in your team already using Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City 4-piece artifact set bonus, you can use something like the Archaic Petra set. And if you may be asking, should I be using Xilonen or Kazuha in this team? There's going to be a couple of differences between the two, and Xilonen's going to be the first character in Genshin Impact to be able to rival Kazuha and what they can bring as a full support character to many teams in the game. Xilonen's main benefits are that her resistance shred is going to last 50% longer and can also last across multiple waves of enemies while also being able to act as a healer in her role. Kazuha is going to instead bring elemental applications from Swirl and crowd control in the form of his grouping with his elemental skill. Some of Kazuha's best teams are Quicken and Aggravate teams where Electro Swirl and Absorptions allow him to contribute damage, or in Freeze teams where he does incredible crowd control. Xilonen, on the other hand, is easier to fit into a wider range of teams because she can't mess with many reactions and is mechanically far simpler than Kazuha is. The fact that she also provides an impressive amount of healing in her role compression allows her to be a great substitute for many healers, or even someone like Zhongli if being used for resistance shred, as well as resistance interruption. Additionally, Xilonen pairs very well with characters like Furina, who's the key in many teams. You don't technically have to pick between Xilonen or Kazuha, and many teams that you'll see are going to be very powerful and use both of them at the same time. So while you might hear that Xilonen is the Geo Kazuha, she doesn't necessarily fully replace him and is more of a side grade to him, but is actually equally as powerful as he is in many situations. Besides, we still have to do the Spiral Abyss, and what's better than one Kazuha? How about two Kazuhas? You could separate them into two different teams or put them in the same one. Xilonen has some pretty notable examples of powerful teams, so let's go through a couple of them. The first one's going to be the Nevelite Hepakari team, which honestly didn't need to get any stronger, but this is going to be Nevelite, Kazuha, Furina, and then a Xilonen as well. We're going to be using Nevelite and Xilonen to increase the healing that our teammates can receive to buff up our fanfare stacks with Furina, and we'll have two characters with Kazuha as well as Xilonen to fully resistant shred Hydro as many times as possible. The one downside of replacing Zhongli with Xilonen in this team is you don't have that giant barrier and you won't have much decreased resistance interruption, but you could also get rid of this downside by gaining access to Xilonen or Nevelite's Constellation 1. The second team is going to be focused on vaporization with Mulanni, Xiangling, Furina, as well as Xilonen. Xilonen is a great fit for Mulanni teams due to both characters having increased synergy due to Night Soul Burst mechanics. Xilonen does help increase the damage of Mulanni's elemental burst, while Mulanni also helps Xilonen's burst as well. Xiangling is used here to apply constant amount of pyro for vaporizer reactions, while Furina provides both increases in damage with her elemental skill in the entire kit, while also being that second Hydro character for our ×2 character Hydro Resonance bonus. But why stop there? We can also use Navia, Xilonen, Bennett, and then either Furina or Xiangling. This is a great example of a teammate and character who greatly benefits from Xilonen. It's important to understand that both Navia as well as Xilonen want other non-Geo characters for their kits to fully work, so this pairing won't be able to work in triple or mono Geo teams. One of my favorite characters also got a buff up with this patch in the form of Hu Tao. You can use something like Hu Tao, Furina, Xilonen, and another Hydro character of your choice, or even fit in Kazuha here as well. Xilonen's going to be a very comfortable pick for a Hu Tao player in vaporized teams, as she removes many of the downsides of Hu Tao currently has with no supports. But these are just examples of some teams you can utilize with Xilonen. Most of the time, you'll be able to use her to her full efficiency just in any party. Think of mono element teams. You can utilize the combination of Xilonen and Kazuha in a double pyro team with someone like Arakeliko and Bennett, or throw her into a Hyper Raiden team where she's able to resistant shred and also be your healer. Xilonen's got a lot of powerful teams for you to try out. Let me know what your favorite ones that you are planning on using with Xilonen down below. The role compression that Xilonen provides, where she's able to resistant shred, buff up the damage, and also heal your active party member, means you can get away with a lot of powerful team compositions just for having her in there. These are some of my favorite teams that I'm going to be using with Xilonen. You let me know how you plan on using her down below. And don't forget to slap that subscribe button and come back for more.